Every single one of us has lost a family member. Once that happens, we go through the funeral process and that person is either cremated or buried. Years later, we expect to visit them again, to remember them, to honor them. George Triplett can't visit his late grandmother because the city cemetery says that she's not there. So he called 13 Investigates to get answers.
I had to go by the rules of the laws.
What do you do if you follow the rules?
The paper trail that they made is the only paper trail I can follow.
But the rules don't add up.
The law is not being the law. The law is not upholding the law.
Each of these headstones has a person underneath and a story of a life once lived.
She was the one that told me you could be anything you wanted to be.
A life that will always be remembered. It's no different for George Triplett.
If you look on the headstone, it says Big Momma. Verlilla Stansbery, Big Momma, because we call her Big Momma.
Also on that headstone, the date Big Momma died, February 27th, 1986. She was buried 4 days later. The funeral pamphlet reads March 3rd. But what you'll notice is Big Momma's headstone does not dot the grassy field of the Freeport City Cemetery like the hundreds of others. Because the city says she isn't buried here.
You can't hide a body. That's what I'm saying. Somebody knows where that body is.
Triplett and his family attended the funeral. He says he remembers it, though he doesn't remember exactly where that burial was.
Don't tell me you can't find her when you had Hearst, you had everything, you had family. It's a lie. You cannot explain it.
But the city says it can't find her. It says it has no record of her internment in 1986, even though her death certificate shows she was buried here. Funeral pamphlet says the same, so does the obituary. The city tells 13 WREX in part, quote, an exhaustive and extensive search conducted several years ago incorporated over 100 years of cemetery records and involved numerous former and current city employees and yielded no record of Verlilla Stansbery at the city cemetery. A search of all financial records produced no indication of payment for a burial plot, and the family has not provided a cemetery deed nor burial order showing otherwise. All city records have been made available to the family for inspection. Although the city certainly sympathizes with the family of Verlilla Stansbery, the city has been unable to find any documentation or physical proof that a burial site exists for her in City Cemetery.
No, if you find a final resting place, that should be a final resting place. It shouldn't be a secret, or if anybody's down there, are you standing over empty holes?
If the city says she's not buried here, but the death certificate says she is, who missed the mark?
It would be the cemetery's responsibility to keep track of the burials and where they're done.
Bob Smith, the president of the Illinois Funeral Directors Association, says he does not come across this too often, but
every question I ask you, and ultimately it sounds like the record should be with the city cemetery.
That's correct. That's correct.
Stansbery's family did not have a lot of money at the time she was buried, so they couldn't afford a headstone at the time. It wasn't until years later Triplett bought one.
Just a blessing of God that made me. If I'd have been tight and wanted to save my money, I would have never found out that she's not there.
And now he may never find out where she is or what actually happened to her. Triplett can file a complaint to the state, but Smith says that may just lead to another dead end.
The comptroller's office would probably go to the cemetery and say, you show us your records, and the cemetery's going to say we don't have.
Ultimately, Triplett wants to find where she's buried and make sure this does not happen again.
So I'd only think that and hope that this is a warning to most anybody, black, white, or whatever, that you pay attention to what's really going on around you.
So that once others follow the rules and the paper trail, it does not happen to them.
Just because it's the law doesn't make it the law being followed. And this is a great example, and I won't let it go.
Now, we did make multiple requests for an interview with multiple leaders in the city of Freeport. We were sent that statement instead. The Burke Tubbs Funeral Home performed that funeral for Miss Stansbery in 1986. It did tell 13 WREX it has record of her funeral there and a document that's called a Statement of Goods and Services. That document does not say where Stansbery was buried, only that a funeral did happen. As we mentioned in the story, if this does happen to you, you can file a complaint with the state of Illinois, though the Freeport City Cemetery does not have any public complaints on record. And we investigated this story after Triplett gave us a call. If you'd have a story that you want us to investigate, call us at this number on your screen, 815-335-7890.
Powerful story tonight. Thanks, James. Well, still to come, trick-or-treat times. Despite the pandemic, kids will be able to get candy in their neighborhood.